In the 12th century, the Eurasian steppe was an ocean of grass and ice. Temperatures plummeted, growing seasons were violently short, and basic survival demanded constant movement in search of pasture. The people who lived here were fractured into dozens of nomadic tribes, groups like the Merkits, the Naimans, and the Tartars. With resources so scarce, these clans were locked in endless cycles of raiding and retaliation. There was no central authority and no shared identity. A boy named Temujin was born into this brutal reality around 1162. When he was 9, rival Tartars poisoned his father. His own clan abandoned his family to starve on the plains, and a rival tribe eventually captured and enslaved him. He escaped, but those early years of extreme poverty and betrayal taught him a permanent lesson. Relying on traditional tribal blood loyalties only guaranteed chaos and death. To survive, he needed to build a completely new power structure, one based entirely on personal competence and absolute loyalty to him. As Temujin began to gather followers and defeat rival chiefs, he broke all the established rules of steppe warfare. When he conquered a tribe, he executed their aristocracy and aggressively scattered the remaining men across his own ranks, erasing their old clan identities completely. In this new army, aristocratic birth meant nothing. He promoted men strictly on their battlefield skill. His greatest generals, men like Jebe and Subutai, came from humble backgrounds, and in Jebe's case, even started out as an enemy archer who had shot Temujin's horse in battle. By 1206, he had subjugated or absorbed every major nomadic group on the steppe. At a massive assembly called a Kurultai, his unified followers gave him a new title, Genghis Khan, the universal ruler. The adoption of this title marked the installation of a new operating system over the region. Genghis Khan had replaced centuries of tribal warfare with a single, highly disciplined Mongolian identity. To see how he controlled this new nation, we have to look at this structural diagram. Genghis Khan mathematically reorganized his military. He grouped his men into units of 10, called an arban. 10 arbans formed a company of 100. 10 companies formed a battalion of 1,000, and 10 battalions made a tumen of 10,000. This specific structure deliberately mixed men from different tribes, forcing them to rely on each other. It also created an unbreakable chain of accountability. If one man in a 10-man unit fled from battle, the entire unit faced execution. Discipline became a matter of mutual survival. The core hardware powering this machine was the Mongol composite bow. Made from layered wood, horn, and sinew, it generated massive force and allowed a mounted warrior to accurately strike targets up to 300 meters away, double the range of contemporary European bows. With this mobility and range, the Mongols perfected tactics like the mengudai, or feigned retreat. A vanguard of light cavalry would engage the enemy, then suddenly turn and sprint away. When the opposing army broke their ranks to chase, the retreating Mongols they ran directly into a trap. Once the enemy was disorganized and surrounded, heavily armored Mongol cavalry units, riding horses protected by thick leather scales, would charge in to deliver a devastating close-quarters final blow. European and Asian accounts often described the Mongols as a chaotic, demonic horde. The reality was the exact opposite. They were a perfectly synchronized, highly disciplined military machine. That machine faced a severe test starting in 1209, when Genghis Khan pushed into northern China to attack the Western Xia and Jin dynasties. Open steppe tactics couldn't breach massive stone fortress walls, so the Mongols adapted. They actively recruited captured Chinese siege engineers and put them to work operating trebuchets and catapults to crack the defenses. A decade later, this map shows how they approached the Khwarezmian Empire in Central Asia. The Mongols coordinated multiple armies to march across different routes and converge perfectly on a single target. They used captured populations as human shields and employed psychological terror to force cities to surrender. The Mongols rarely invented new technologies, but they were the ultimate adopters. They absorbed the brightest minds and the deadliest tools of the civilizations they destroyed and scaled them for global warfare. To govern a rapidly expanding territory that included dozens of languages and religions, Genghis Khan codified the Yasa. This was a supreme, highly secretive body of oral laws that regulated everything from military desertion to daily civic behavior. To enforce these laws across vast distances, the Mongols built the yam. This was a highly efficient pony express network of relay stations that allowed intelligence and military orders to travel thousands of miles in a matter of days. Because the Mongols originally had no written language, Genghis Khan decreed the adoption of the Uyghur script. For the first time, Mongol laws, census data, and tax records were formally documented. This intense centralized control resulted in the Pax Mongolica. The brutal conquests paved the way for remarkable civic stability. The Mongols instituted broad religious freedom, provided social safety nets during crop failures, and made the trade routes incredibly safe. If the vast geographic expanse of the Eurasian continent was the hardware, the Yasa and the Yam functioned as the administrative software required to keep it running. Looking at this timeline map of the empire, we see that after Genghis Khan died in 1227, his successors continued to expand the borders rapidly. Eventually, the administration hit a geographic breaking point. The immense weight of the territory caused it to fracture into four distinct realms: the Yuan dynasty in China, the Ilkhanate in Persia, the Golden Horde in Russia, and the Chagatai Khanate in Central Asia. In these separate territories, the descendants of Genghis Khan gradually assimilated. They adopted sedentary administrative practices, changed their attire, and embraced the local cultures they had conquered, abandoning the original nomadic code of the steppe. The Mongol system didn't fail from outside pressure. It fragmented because its new administrators localized their rule and lost the universal discipline that built the empire in the first place. In just a few decades, Genghis Khan and his highly disciplined forces built the largest contiguous land empire in human history. By violently smashing the rigid, isolated borders of medieval states, his military machine physically forced the eastern and western hemispheres into direct, continuous contact. This massive unification revitalized the Silk Road, triggering an explosion of cross-cultural exchange. Ideas, technologies, and goods transferred across the continent with an efficiency the world had never seen. Genghis Khan is widely remembered for the terrifying devastation of his conquests, but behind the violence was a ruthless system architect, one who dismantled an era of tribal chaos and laid the foundational circuitry for the modern, interconnected globe.